In August 1991, the Legion of Valor established the Legion of Valor Veterans Museum. Located at 2425 Fresno Street in downtown Fresno, the museum itself is housed within the Fresno Memorial Auditorium. The auditorium building, built and dedicated in 1936, has been placed on the National Register of Historic Places. The foyer is a grand space with a 26-foot high ceiling. The foyer walls and ceilings are decorated with Art Deco murals. Among the major Art Deco elements are the large bronze light fixtures mounted on the columns. The Fresno Memorial Auditorium was, from 1936 to 1966, Fresno's most significant cultural facility. The building's Art Deco exterior was outstanding for its time. Over the years, events held in the auditorium included Broadway plays and musicals, concerts, operas, ballets, and conventions. Performers appearing there over the years included notables such as Frank Sinatra, Ray Charles, Ricky Nelson, and many, many others. The completion in 1966 of a new convention center complex located in downtown Fresno led to several changes in the use of the Fresno Memorial Auditorium. In 1992, the city officially renamed the building the Fresno Veterans Memorial Auditorium and the National Legion of Valor Museum within it. Staffed by volunteers and supported in part by the city of Fresno, the museum houses thousands of items and papers donated by Legion of Valor members and others. It contains an outstanding collection of military equipment and memorabilia. Numerous framed citations, photographs, and exhibits tell the story of America's wars as seen by individual soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen. Special tribute is paid to those who have received the four highest military honors: the Medal of Honor, the Distinguished Service Cross, the Navy Cross, and the Air Force Cross. The Legion of Valor itself has even deeper roots in history. Formed as the Medal of Honor Legion in April of 1890, its original members were composed of Civil War and Indian War campaign veterans who were recipients of the Medal of Honor. With the passing of years and the demise of original members, the membership dwindled. On November 25, 1918, recipients of the Army Distinguished Service Cross were admitted. In 1933, members of the United States Navy and Marine Corps who had received the Navy Cross were included. On August 4, 1955, Public Law 224 of the 84th Congress incorporated the Army and Navy Legion of Valor of the United States. Recipients of the Air Force Medal of Honor and the Air Force Cross became members on June 21, 1961. Each of the three services has its own distinctive design for the Medal of Honor and the three crosses. The Medal of Honor is awarded for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of life, above and beyond the call of duty. The three crosses are awarded for extraordinary heroism. Many of these two highest decorations are awarded posthumously.
This is the entrance to the Veterans Memorial Museum in Fresno, California, the home of the Legion of Valor. This is where you can start in here. You can go in any direction. It's circular. You can't get lost. You start off here. Most of the items in here are in a chronological grouping. So as an example, this case here, those 4 cases, that wall is all memorabilia from World War I. Most everything in here is labeled so you can walk along, look at the item, read the description, tell you what it is. The real historical value is to be reading all these things. It's a history lesson in itself. If you can get in here and take a look at that, that's kind of an interesting little item from World War II. That young man was carrying his little Bible in his left shirt pocket, or his right shirt pocket, I guess, and he was hit by a piece of artillery shrapnel. His Bible basically saved his life. So there's the shrapnel right there, which went into his Bible and not through his lung. This is one of our really prized exhibits. It was donated to us by the city of Fresno, or the county of Fresno. It's a Gatling gun. It was manufactured in 1902, I believe, for the United States Navy by Colt Firearms. It weighs 266 pounds, not exactly a lightweight weapon. This room over here is dedicated to the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941. All of the memorabilia in here basically relates to that attack, plus the film that's playing is about Pearl Harbor. I'd like to, for a particular reason, I'd like to point out to you one specific item here. Or a group of items, I guess. These items right along here. There's a card that will tell you what they are. You see there's a naval officer's sword. It's a picture of the USS Nevada at Pearl Harbor on December 7th. This is an ensign shoulder boards, and these are 2 pieces of shrapnel. These donations were made to us by Robert E. Thomas, who was a young ensign on the Nevada on December 7th. And those 2 pieces of shrapnel laid him up in the hospital for about 13 months. I'm pointing that out to you for a particular reason because we have another display that he was kind enough to give us a year or so ago that we'll get to a little bit later. This area of museum down here is mostly dedicated to the Vietnam War. There's a lot of artifacts and maps and photographs of that era. This area over here, all these uniforms along the side of the wall were donated to us by members of the Legion of Valor. Just for your background information, the Legion of Valor is an organization that was formed in 1891, and it was comprised of people who had been awarded the Medal of Honor. At that point in time, they were all Civil War or Indian War veterans. Subsequently, in 1921, the organization extended its membership to people who had been awarded the Distinguished Service Cross and the Navy Cross. And then later on, with the development of the defense establishment, when the Air Force became an independent unit, they were included, so you can be invited to join if you hold a Medal of Honor or any one of the service crosses. Other than these, most everything in here was donated to us by local veterans, which is very interesting. We try and keep these things current. Like there's an interesting story here about Abe Baum. As a follow-up on this was printed in World War II magazine about 2 years ago. And as a matter of fact, it was printed just about 2 months before Abe Baum passed away. But there's a lot of interesting historical stories involved if you take the time to read them. This section in here is a covered display case of aircraft. The far side is all World War II vintage aircraft. This side is all aircraft post-World War II, mainly jets, would call your attention to the uniforms that are hung around all the walls. Those, again, were all donations to us by local veterans, mostly local veterans. Particular interest is this naval uniform right here. We're not sure who gave that to us or when, but we determined that, to the best of our knowledge, it was Commander David McCampbell, who was the United States Navy's top ace in World War II with 34 aerial victories over the Japanese. And we made that determination looking at the ribbon array on the uniform. This is one of only 2 U.S. Navy aviators that had been awarded both the Navy Cross and a Medal of Honor. Many of the stories about the war for both the military and civilian side are in the cases, and again, you have to read the cards, they're all there, but there's interesting series here about rationing, which is an interesting story in itself. I get an kind of interesting story about this right here. My doctor's sister is an Army doctor, and she has commented to him from her service in Afghanistan that all these American soldiers are kids, they're children. I get a chuckle out of looking at this photograph here, this little group right here. There's a photograph here of 2 Air Force pilots. One of them here is Brigadier General Chuck Yeager, who you'd probably recognize. The other is one of the 8th Air Force's top fighter aces, Bud Anderson. If you take a good look at that picture, he appears to be about 12 years old. And yet he's the top fighter ace in the 8th Air Force. This room over here is a display of small arms, rifles and pistols of the military. One of my favorites to show off to visitors is this gun right here. It's called the Liberator. It's a piece of trash. We turned out thousands upon thousands of them during the war for $1.50 each. And it was considered a gun to get a gun with. We dropped these into occupied territories. Members of the resistance could then use that to kill an enemy soldier and take his gun. It's interesting in that the operating instructions for the pistol here are on this card over here, and they're done in drawings, because when the gun was manufactured, nobody knew where it was going. The vast majority of them were dropped into Japanese-occupied China, but we also dropped them into France, Holland, Belgium, most of the European countries. One of those, I understand, one of those about 2 years ago, just as you see it there with the box, the instructions, the gun, the ammunition, and the dowel, was sold at an auction for $9,000. Not bad for a $1.50 investment. Might take a notice here. There are about 6 cases here in the museum that are Nazi German militaria. There's 3 of them right there. These were donated to us by this gentleman here, Paul Schultz. It was his private collection, and it's very extensive and very complete. I find this display kind of interesting. This is a slideshow of photographs taken at Hammer Field. In case you weren't in Fresno in 1941, Hammer Field was built then by the U.S. Army Air Corps. Today, it's more commonly known as Fresno Yosemite International Airport. We put this display up with the slideshow inside some windows. These windows were from the last 1941 vintage building that was demolished last summer. And the contractor doing the demolition gave us some of the windows so that we could build this display, so you can look at the photographs of Hammer Field through the windows, just as thousands of servicemen did in the 1940s. Photographs on the wall over there are local guys who were prisoners of war. And that binder over there has their biographies in it. And if you take the time to look that over, you might even recognize some names. Jerry Eckenrod up here was one of the founders of this museum. Oh, here's Judge Frank J. Creed, who retired from the Superior Court in Fresno. This section in here in this room, all of these pictures up here on these walls are living members of the Legion of Valor. We have display cases here, memorabilia from the Korean War. And then in these cases here is memorabilia from Iraq, Desert Storm, Afghanistan, more contemporary things. Right over there to your right is our collection of Civil War memorabilia. This is our display here commemorating the Doolittle raid on Japan of April 18th, 1942. Including a Doolittle uniform that his daughter donated to us. That's Hollywood Goes to War, and there's pictures and brief biographies of Hollywood actors, movie stars that served in World War II. Some of them were movie stars before the war, such as Clark Gable, Tyrone Power, Jimmy Stewart. Others became movie stars after the war, such as Paul Newman. But if you get hooked on that, that's good for about 45 minutes. In 1980, Steven Spielberg made a film called The Mission, and that is a prop that was constructed for and photographed in that movie. Fairly extensive size model of naval vessels from World War II. The major one being the USS Missouri, which is about 10 feet long. That photograph at the end of the display is a Navy Chief Petty Officer who lived out in Coalinga, and he made these ships as his hobby. And my understanding is he called up one day and asked us if we'd like to have his model ships. That's a kind of a brief tour, I understand, but you can take the time to look at all the items and read the cards, the definitions, and the stories behind them. You can have quite an education and spend several hours at it.
Here with us today is a member and docent. And sir, tell us your name.
My name is Jesse Fabella.
Yes, Mr. Fabella, pardon me. I would like to ask you how you became involved with the museum.
Well, what happened was I was at home doing nothing after I retired. Pretty much spending my time in my room by myself. And my wife suggested that I come down here to kind of get me out of the house. And she realized that I love the military. So she said, why don't you go down there and volunteer? And I came down here, volunteered, and the guys took me in like I was a long-lost child. Even the old World War II veterans, they became my best friends. So I kind of feel like this is therapy for me, because it helps me, talk about things and with people that really know what happened.
The museum is open from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., Monday through Saturday. Admission is free to the public. The museum is conveniently located in downtown Fresno Street, across from the historic Fresno Water Tower. It's an easy walk from most of the downtown Fresno hotels. Fresno transit buses will take you there from most parts of the city, and parking is available at the site. Come visit the Veterans Memorial Museum. You will be surprised and amazed at its treasure trove of military memorabilia. Learn more about our military past and honor those whose gallantry and sacrifices are represented through the exhibits at the museum. A gift shop is located near the museum's entrance, offering badges, caps, pins, and military chevrons, along with other war period related items.